Welcome back to the educational series on winemaking for beginners. In this Series 3 practical session, we are going to cover fining products, stabilization products. We're going to make up a 2.5% sulfite solution. We're going to show you how to do that. And then we're going to cover some optional winemaking equipment that you can own to make it the process a little bit earlier near the end of the video. So here is our wine here, and you can see that I've actually removed about a gallon or 3/4 of a gallon out of it. Now the reason for this is we need to add sulfite to this wine. And if you add sulfite directly to a wine that has just finished fermenting, it could turn into a wine volcano on you and foam up. So the natural thing to do is when that happens is to, as soon as it starts to foam, you want to put your hand over the top of it like that. Well, as soon as you do that, now you have the foam spraying out in all different directions. So we remove some of the wine from the carboy at this point, and then we're going to sprinkle in the sulfite solution at this point. So if you add it in slowly, it's still going to foam. It has a potential to foam up, but it's not going to be as bad. And if it does foam up, it's got a lot of room for it to grow. So we have our sulfite solution here that I've opened up, and it's a white powder, and we're going to slowly start adding this in. There's no need to rehydrate this or mix it with water first. We're just going to add it in, and it will dissolve in there all on its own. So this is enough sulfite solution. This gives that wine about 100 parts per million of protection from the sulfites. So in this case, it didn't really foam up. So we're going to just mix that all in there. Give it a little bit of a stir around. Get our sulfite mixed into the wine. And we're done. So what we are also going to do at this point now is the wine that I did remove as a preventative, we're going to add this into the wine at this point. Add it all back in. And just pour that back in. And luckily we never had any foaming problems with this one, but I have had it in the past, so it doesn't tell you this in the kit to do this. So I do it anyway, and I'm showing you that this is one of those precautions that you do want to take. So we're going to get this all in there, and then we're going to add in our fining products. Now you can see that there is some foam in there when I started adding this in. And that is some of the natural degassing that happens in the wine. Okay, so we've got our sulfite in there now. The next thing we want to do is we want to add in our Kesasol fining agent. Now, it comes in a package like this, and it's just a liquid solution, so we're going to add that in there right now. It's just a clear liquid solution. It's not important, you don't have to get every little last drop of it in there. And then what the instructions say is to stir it in for about 20 seconds. Now what you're doing here is you're getting that Kesasol in there. It is the negatively charged product. It's negatively charged. So what it's doing as we're stirring here, it is searching for those positive charged particles in the wine that it's going to marry up to and form that temporary bond with and eventually settle out for us. So by using the opposite end of the spoon there, we're able to stir this wine around and get that Kesasol distributed in that wine volume so that it can actually find its partners and marry up. Now there's nothing, we can't add any of the chitosan in here for 1 hour. So what we're going to do at this point is we're going to add in our potassium sorbate, because for this course we have students and we are kind of speeding this process along a little bit. Normally what I would do is I wouldn't add any of that sorbate in there if I was making this wine for myself. I would instead, what I would do is I would just let this sit for a couple months, and any of the fermentation that was still happening in there would happen on its own naturally, and I wouldn't have to worry about trying to stop it, because it's potassium sorbate, it actually inhibits the yeast from reproducing. Okay, now we are going to add in the potassium sorbate, and that is going to be our sterilization product. And we're just adding it in. We don't want it to foam up too much here. And we're getting a little bit of foam there, so we're just going to pause. So any products that you add to your wine can cause some foaming up. And again, you don't want that volcano to happen. So we're going to just wait here. While we're waiting for this to settle down, I'm going to talk a little bit about the how we want to be tasting the wine at every stage. So at every stage you want to taste that wine. At this stage here, I did taste it already. The wine is pretty much dry at this point. There was a little tiny bit of residual sweetness in there, so that's why I added in that potassium sorbate for the course that we're teaching. And you want to do that because you're looking for a number of different things when you're tasting it. You want to make sure you're building up that library of your tastes, so you know how that wine is supposed to taste at each step during that winemaking process. Now, you don't have to taste it every day, but you should taste it at the beginning, usually partway through, and then at the end at this point. But you do want to be smelling that wine either every day or every second day when you're checking your specific gravity, because that's going to tell you if you're having a problem in your fermentation or not, if your yeast is becoming stressed. It's not that so much that important with the kits, but when you start getting into the grape wines, it's really important. So we are being careful not to start to make this wine volcano happen. Okay, that's all in there now. Just stir that up gently. Okay. The next step we have to do now is we have to wait an hour to add that chitosan in there. So through the power of video, we'll be back in an hour and we will show you how to add the chitosan in there. Okay, welcome back. It's been an hour and the Kisasol has been in there happily marrying up with its counterparts in there. And now we're going to add the chitosan and allow it to do its part. So it is a liquid just like the Kisasol. And I've cut the corner of the bag off, and we're just going to just gradually pour that into the wine. And again, you don't have to get every little drop out. And now we take the spoon and we continue that stirring process for 20 seconds. To make sure that it gets all mixed up into the wine and well distributed. So all I'm doing is rotating the spoon around, and it creates a little bit of a vortex in there and it stirs the wine up. You can see how we've agitated the wine a little bit and it's off gassing a bit more. Now it's foaming up again. So take the spoon and for another 10 seconds just go in the opposite direction there. Make sure you go right down into the bottom of the carboy. And you just stir the spoon around and it is stirring that wine up for us. Okay. That's all that's really required there. So that completes the fining process for the wine. And now all that's left is to let this sit. We're going to do the same thing for the red wine, but we don't have to repeat the same process on video. So you've already seen how it's done here, and the red wine is going to be exactly the same process as we did here. So what we're going to do is we're going to take a little bit of a break. We're going to clear all this stuff up, and I am going to set up and we're going to show you how to mix up a 2.5% solution of the potassium metabisulfite that we use for sterilizing our bottles, or sanitizing our bottles, I should say, because we don't really sterilize, we sanitize. Okay, thank you. Okay, I am going to demonstrate now how to make a 2.5% sulfite solution using potassium metabisulfite powder and some clean water. So what I have here is I have a 1 liter jar or bottle filled up with, partially full of cold water, and I'm going to add the potassium metabisulfite powder to this. I've marked here where it is exactly 1 liter, and the idea is we're going to put the powder in first, and then we're going to top it up with water till we get to exactly that 1 liter mark, and that'll create a perfect 2.5% solution for us. I'm showing this right now. This solution is just used for sanitizing. It's not super critical, but if we're going to go to the effort of making it, we might as well make it as accurate as we can. So I've used my fancy painter's tape here to put the labels on here. So this is a 2.5% solution. It's in a 1 liter bottle, and I've added 25 grams to 1 liter. So it tells me how to, I don't have to look it up each time, it's already right there. I also make up a 10% solution, but that's in a 750 ml bottle because I don't use as much of it. If you were going to use a 750 ml bottle, you just take, you wouldn't use 25 grams in it, you'd use 18.75 grams to make a 2.5% solution in 750 mils. Okay, so the simple thing to do here is we are using our jeweler scale. These are available on Amazon for about less than $20. They're accurate to within 1/100th of a gram, and these are a perfect thing to have for winemaking. So we turn it on. If you put the container on first before you turn it on, it tears out automatically, so you don't have to worry about the weight of the container. There's also a tear button that you can press to zero it out as well. So I'm going to measure 25 grams of potassium metabisulfite powder. And we're almost there. There we go, exactly 25 grams. Now it's just a simple matter of putting a funnel in here and pouring the powder through the funnel into our 1 liter bottle. Now there is some powder residue left in the funnel, and what we're going to do is we're going to add water now to get us up to exactly the 1 liter mark that we're looking for. This is called washing the solution through the funnel, because what this does, by pouring the water into the funnel, this actually takes all the powder. Ooh, and I went just a hair over, that's okay. Again, this is not critical on this one. I should have been a little bit slower there, but we're just a hair above the mark there. So we've washed any powder that was in that funnel into our container, into our 1 liter jar bottle. The lid on. Right here you can see the powder sitting on the bottom. It's just a matter of just gently rotating it, and you can see the powder is stirring up. And a couple small quick little rotations, and you can see how quickly it dissolves. It's pretty much all done now. There's still a few little particles that are floating around in there, but we'll give that a little mix up later on. That'll be fully dissolved in about 5 minutes. So one of the things that we do provide you, that's located in the description below. If you click on the description below, there'll be a link to a Google Drive folder, and that'll contain a lot of the forms and graphs and teaching aids that we use for this course. Those are all available there for your personal download, and feel free to go there and get them. This winemaking log is a really important document to have, and we use these to keep track of every batch of wine that we make. On the back of it, there's tables for how to do acid additions, pH adjustments, sugar additions, sulfite additions, etc. At the bottom, there's these two tables here. The first one is your 2.5% solution table, and this bottom one is your 10% solution table. The 10% solution table, you would use that for adding to wine, and whereas this is one, you might add this if you're doing a small batch or something, but or if you only have the 2.5%, you can add this to wine too. It just dilutes the wine down a little bit more because it's not as strong of a solution. It's set out so it's divided up into parts per million going this way, and along the length there, that is your different size containers. So for example, if you wanted to add 100 parts per million to a 23 liter carboy, 100 parts per million is here, and you'd go along there to a 23 liter carboy, and it would tell you how much to add to a 23 liter carboy. Okay. This solution doesn't have to be refrigerated, but if you do refrigerate it, it'll last a lot longer. Without refrigeration, it's probably good for a few months, but if refrigerated, you can probably get a year out of it. This stuff is so cheap to make, it's not even worthwhile to worry about it so much. It basically cost a couple pennies to make this solution here. This potassium metabisulfite solution, it's about $5 or $6 for 250 grams of it. So you can make 10 batches for that price. So maybe 60 cents a batch. Okay, that's it for now. What we're going to do is when we come back, we're going to talk about optional winemaking equipment that you can own to make the process, whole winemaking process quite a bit simpler. We are going to talk about optional equipment that you can own now. This optional equipment will make it easier to do for your winemaking process. It's not critical, you don't have to have it, but it is going to make the job of making wine a little bit more easier for you. So one of the first things we're going to talk about is a wine filter. So this one here, this is a Buon Vino Superjet. This is their bigger model, and this is suitable for doing 50 gallons of wine. They also make a mini jet version, and that is good for doing 5 gallons of wine with one set of filters. The filters come in different porosities. There's 3 to a bag, and that's the same as in the small filter. They range in size from a 1, which is your coarse filter, to a 2, to a 3. The most versatile one is going to be the number 2 filters that you're going to use the most. This will polish the wines up and get them clean, and that's pretty much all I ever use for doing with the filtering. I always filter my whites, but I rarely filter my reds. If you leave the reds long enough, they will settle out on their own. If you don't filter the whites, you'll get a line of sediment. Even though it looks clear in the carboy when you go to bottle it, you always get a small line of sediment in the bottles that forms over time. So if you don't want to see that line, you pick up a filter. The next thing we're going to talk about is shrink tops. Now the shrink top is just this plastic little capsule that fits over the top of the bottles. This is more of a higher end one for home winemakers. The bottle just slides in, there's a big coil in there, you just slide it in and pull it out and it's sealed. The next step down from that would be a heat gun you can purchase. These are available in your home improvement tools sections of the stores. Places like Home Depot will sell them. This one here, it's like an industrial hair dryer. It does get very hot, so be careful to keep your fingers and hands away from the nozzle there. But that is used simply by holding the bottle and turn the bottle and it'll shrink that top down. Another option is the old school kettle. Now the new ones won't work for this because they've got the safety features built in, and it stops a lot of steam from coming out of them. But if you get an old one from a thrift shop or something, or maybe your wife has one sitting around that she's not using anymore, these work quite well for doing that as well. And to use those, you just put a bit of water in there and you hold it like that and you twist the bottle and it shrinks the top down. Next thing I want to talk about is some syringes. So this is a 20 ml syringe here, and we got a 10 ml syringe. These are very useful for measuring your sulfite solutions or any other additions that you're putting into the wine that's in a liquid form. These are available from your local winemaking shops, or you can get them from a pharmacy. They're a couple dollars each. You should have a couple of each. They're handy to have. The next step up from that is a graduated barrette. It's like a little turkey baster, and this is a 10 mil one, so it's 10 mils up to here. So you can see that there's the difference in size is significant, and it makes it easier to get a more accurate measurement with the barrette. The barettes aren't super important until you start getting into doing some acid testing. The next thing you should have is a small funnel and a large funnel. Now inside the large funnel you should be able to find a strainer, stainless steel strainer that will fit in there. This is really helpful for putting anything into your carboy, these large funnels, and the screen helps to filter out any seeds or skins that may be in your wine. In the whites you're not going to see it too much, but in the reds, even if you're making a wine kit and that bag breaks open, you're going to have skins and seeds all over the place. It's useful to have this to filter it out. These little funnels, you can get those at your local kitchen shops, or maybe you could steal one out of your wife's kitchen. I wouldn't recommend that though, because I've been caught a few times, so I have one of my own down in my winemaking room here. Same goes for these little guys here. So a little tiny stainless steel whisk. Your wife probably has one of these too. Yeah, go buy your own. They're good for mixing up the yeast slurry with the Go-Firm. It just helps to get everything mixed up a little bit better. Set of stainless steel mixing spoons. These are cheap to buy at a local kitchen shop, and they're handy for measuring out different substances and powders. A 2-cup measuring cup. These are really handy for just overall measuring and pouring liquids inside your wine cellar. They are graduated, but these measurements aren't very accurate in here. One of the things that really, I say this is an optional item, but this is really for the price, you really should invest in one of these. If you're just making kits, you don't need it, but as soon as you start moving into making wine out of juice or fruits or even grapes, you're going to find you're going to need one of these quite quickly. This is a digital jeweler's scale. They sell for about $15 to $20 on Amazon. This one is good up to 500 grams, and it's accurate down to 1/100th of a gram. So this is a very handy item to have. It's going to create really accurate measurements for any time you have to measure anything out to add to your wine. The next thing we're going to talk about is pH pens. If you're making kits, you don't really need these, but as soon as you start making wine out of any fruits or out of grapes, this is one of those items that you are going to need. This is on the low end side. It's got a probe that comes down and a little meter on there. You can calibrate these with a calibration solution, and they're fairly accurate, and they're accurate enough to do anything that you need to do with winemaking. These can be purchased on the online for anywhere between $20 to $30. The next step up from that is a pH meter. This is the Vinmetrica SC300, and this one will measure sulfite levels in the wine, pH in the wine, your total acidity in the wine, and this is a big step up from that. However, this is more on the intermediate to advanced winemaking type of piece of equipment that you would get. These are in the neighborhood of a few $100s, and they come with different probes for doing different functions. And I mention it just so you know what they are, that they're out there. This is your bottle washer. This one is brass, but most of the new ones come in stainless steel. And this is super handy for cleaning bottles and cleaning carboys. There are adapters you can get for your kitchen sink. This is basically same as a hose fitting on the outside hose. And this will screw onto most laundry tub sinks. but it doesn't screw onto your kitchen sink. But there are adapters that your wine shop would be able to sell you, that you take the little tiny nozzle off your sink and you screw that one on, and then this would screw onto that. It has a valve in it, and when you push down on the lever, it opens up the valve and allows water to shoot out the top there. This is super handy for cleaning bottles and for cleaning carboys. The way it works is you've got your bottle attached to the tap, and you push that down, the water shoots up inside here, inside the bottle, and it rinses it all out, and when you pull that up, it releases the valve. That pretty much covers all of the winemaking equipment, additional equipment. You know, there's always all kinds of gadgets and gizmos that you can purchase, but for the most part, that is pretty much a complete setup. A lot of this stuff you can purchase it new, but a lot of this stuff is easily available on those used sites, things like Facebook Marketplace. There's local used buy and sell places. Or even winemakers that you know might have some stuff that they're willing to sell. So picking this stuff up used is a more economical way of doing it. When you get into supplies that you're going to need, you need a bag of corks to cork your bottles. We talked about Diversol in the previous lecture section. This is a really powerful cleaner. And again, there's other cleaners out there you can use, but just make sure you get something that is made specifically for making wine. We talked about the potassium metabisulfite powder and the GoFirm. You can purchase this as well. And the Fermato. They look very similar, and these are both different forms of yeast nutrients. This is more of your complex nutrient for your fermentation, and the GoFirm is just for rehydrating your yeast. Okay, so that completes everything for now, and we will see you next time when we in session or lesson 4. Thank you for joining us. This completes the lesson 3 practical video. In the lesson 4 lecture video, which is next in the series, we will cover hydrometers in detail, refractometers, formulas, introduction to wine varietals, additions to Elevate kits, yeasts in more detail, and the benefits of belonging to a winemaking club. The link in the top right corner of the screen will take you to our course playlist that I talked about earlier. Click on it, subscribe to our YouTube channel so that you can find other videos in this series easily. If you have already done this, just ignore the link and enjoy the rest of the series. Thank you for joining us.